Welcome back to Health Kindness here on Northwest Digital News. I'm Kevin Hunter with Jody Summers, and we're going to have some conversation about how to live life the way it was meant to be. And part of this is the conversation today is going to be around infectious disease. People are aware that there are many different vaccines out there available for infectious disease, and so I want to make clear that this is not an anti-vax show. We are simply talking about ways to use proper nutrition and nutrients which are associated with our natural defenses against these diseases as well. In fact, Jody, there's many people out there that can't be vaccinated for a number of health-related reasons. And so good things for them to know, and good things for anyone to know who might be vaccinated, good things to know about how to add some of your natural defenses against infectious diseases. So where would you like to start?
Well, every disease generally, I won't say every, because there are a handful that we don't know what they are yet. I'm not saying they don't exist, but every disease has a deficiency that's associated with it. And so if we know the deficiency that's associated with a specific disease, and let's say we've come in contact with that disease, it would be wise to make sure that we have nutrients that are rich in that nutrient that's associated with that disease.
Absolutely.
And so I'll start there. And the second thing that I want to mention is that it does seem recently, well, it is true. Recently, there has been this media blitz specifically about measles in the news, like as if this were some epidemic of death sweeping the nation. And you hear about how all these cases of measles have been, exposed. And in fact, in my town, 1 block from my house is the gym that I went to for years and years and years, no longer there. But I don't go there anymore, but for years I went to this gym. Well, 3 cases of measles. You would think that the town is shutting down. It's so awful. It's so awful. Mm-hmm. It's so overdone. And yet, if you look at the facts of the CDC lists deaths in this country, and for the last 20 years, so since the year 2000, so it's only 19 years. So in 19 years and 3 months, there have been exactly 11 deaths in this country from measles. 11. That's not even 1 per year, correct? 11. Mm-hmm. Documented deaths on the CDC website. Now, every one of those 11 deaths, that's 11 deaths too many. I get that. And every death is tragic. Mm-hmm. But it is not an epidemic. It is not this, people are dying, you're going to get the measles. In fact, years ago, measles was, you got the measles, you stayed home from school, you went back to school the next week. Mm-hmm. And the reason that measles is not a deadly epidemic in this country is that we have sufficient, or at least a steady source of vitamin A, mm-hmm. clean water, and nutrition. And mm-hmm. if you look at where right now, so what you're hearing in the media is all these people are dying from the measles, and measles is a deadly disease. I am no way, in any way, shape, or form saying it is not and people don't die from it. But in general, in this country, we do not. The epidemic you're hearing so much of one of them is out of Madagascar. And mm-hmm. Madagascar is one of the poorest countries on the face of this earth. They do not have clean water, and they're vitamin A deficient across the board. Mm-hmm. Well, vitamin A, just like we talked about at the beginning, every disease has a nutrient associated with it. Just like vitamin C for scurvy. So the pirates, I don't know, the people on the ship who got scurvy, they were mm-hmm. vitamin C deficient. Rickets is vitamin D deficiency. Well, measles is vitamin A deficiency. And so if you look at the countries where people are dying from the measles, which it is deadly, vitamin A would be a benefit to them. So even in this country, if you cannot be vaccinated, if you choose not to be vaccinated, if you were exposed to the measles, increasing your vitamin A would be a wise choice.
Now, that advice is actually repeated by the World Health Organization.
Yes.
So you're not sharing something that's new, and people should be aware of that.
I'm not sharing my opinion. I am sharing stuff from the World Health Association, the World Health Organization, and the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. Both of those are listed on their website.
Fantastic. Let's talk about shingles and chickenpox.
So shingles, and so I have listed these things. I'm just going to name all these nutrients that are associated with the diseases. Shingles and chickenpox, again, are vitamin D. There's a current study going on right now with elderly people, again, because there's a shingles epidemic, and they're showing that people who are in the optimal range. The study is not over yet. It started in 2010 and it ends in 2020. So it's still got a year to go, but it does look like, from what I can pick up from what's going on so far, is that people with optimal levels of vitamin D seem to be much better than people who are vitamin D deficient. So vitamin D, vitamin A, and vitamin C are associated with shingles and the chickenpox, which is the same virus.
And your body actually produces a ton of vitamin D with exposure to sunlight. So good to get out there in that sun.
Yes, absolutely.
Rotavirus and pneumonia.
Again, back to vitamin D. It was interesting as I was looking at each one of these in preparation for this sharing, and so many go back to vitamin D, and we are a nation of vitamin D deficient people. Years ago, like when my parents lived on a farm and their parents, lived, you ate the whole animal. Like if you lived on a farm and you had a cow or whatever, you ate the whole animal. And in organ meats, vitamin D is extremely high. Fish, has lots of vitamin D. People were out in the sun more often. They didn't put sunscreen on their skin to block the sun. Now we don't eat organ meats. We don't eat the whole animal. We stay out of the sun because we're told that it's dangerous, of which it is not. And then when we do go out in the sun, we load our bodies up with sunscreen, and we are now vitamin D deficient. And therefore, when you see these epidemics of the flu, the different viruses, a lot of times those are people who do not have optimal levels of vitamin D.
Diphtheria.
Diphtheria. It's one that is a little bit rare. We don't see it much often in this country, but it is associated with vitamin C.
And vitamin C, why would people be deficient on vitamin C? Deficient on vitamin C. I guess maybe I'm thinking up from the perspective of somebody who enjoys a lot of fruits in particular in my diet, but why would so many people be deficient on vitamin C?
Well, you eat fruit and probably vegetables that are high in vitamin C, but the majority of people in this country, unfortunately, eat the standard American diet, the SAD diet, which has such a low level of real food with fruits and vegetables. And vitamin C is actually it's damaged with heat. So this is the part that this angers me almost. Oftentimes you'll see orange juice pasteurized. Okay. Pasteurization is raising the temperature very high to kill bacteria. Okay, I get that. But when you raise the temperature very high, you kill vitamin C. So you think of orange juice as high in vitamin C, but if it's pasteurized, it's not as nearly as good as just eating an orange that is not pasteurized. So, so people just don't eat enough vitamin C rich foods. In fact, in hospitals with some cancer clients, there is scurvy, which is the extreme vitamin C deficiency disease. That's the end of the spectrum. And they're seeing in some cancer patients scurvy. It should never happen. Never, 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 especially at a hospital.
So start consuming some of these goodies you see on the back window here. Make sure that you're consuming some of these. And as Jody mentioned, the SAD, the standard American diet, you're not going to find any of this stuff in the McDonald's or Burger King drive-up. So you're going to have to go somewhere else. And as we have said many times on this broadcast, if you're incapable of cooking yourself and going out and doing some grocery shopping yourself, you're probably going to have deficiencies in a whole bunch of these nutrients. Let's talk about tetanus.
Tetanus is really an interesting one because, again, I think the fear of tetanus has been put in. You cut yourself and you get a tetanus shot. Well, tetanus is a aerobic bacteria that gets deep into the skin. Oftentimes we think of it as a rusty nail, but not even all rusty nails have tetanus. It has to have a specific spore organism, which are oftentimes found on farms. So if you live on a farm and you are out there taking care of your pigs and you step on a rusty nail, it may be a really good idea to protect yourself with a tetanus shot. Okay. If you choose not to have a tetanus shot and you cut yourself and you cut with a knife, a clean knife in your kitchen because you're making salad, and then you go to get a stitch because it's so deep and they say you need a tetanus shot, but you're bleeding out because you're dripping blood into the emergency room, the likelihood of tetanus is slim to none because it has to be aerobic. So that's what tetanus is, because I've heard so many people say, oh, I needed a tetanus shot, I cut myself. I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. But whatever. Vitamin C would be the deficiency for that disease. So vitamin C with tetanus, and I'm not saying in any way, if you are working on a farm and you step on a rusty nail, go and eat an orange. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm just saying, again, we've been led to believe that tetanus is this really widespread, easy to get. It's not as easy to get as we've been led to believe.
And as you mentioned, there's a big difference between a puncture wound, which isn't bleeding out, and a cut, which is bleeding out. Big difference in what the end result on that can be. Let's talk about whooping cough, pertussis.
Again, vitamin D and vitamin C. And you're seeing a pattern here. A, D, and C. So vitamin A and vitamin D are fat-soluble vitamins, and vitamin C is from vegetables. So from good quality meat products, from the sun, and from vegetables. It makes sense. I mean, it really makes sense.
Meningitis.
And meningitis is the same, D and C. If you look at college age kids, oftentimes they get this meningitis, this horrible meningitis, when they go into college. And there's been deaths even at college. They don't feel good, they lay down and they don't wake up. They lay down and they don't wake up. But that first year, they're not eating well. They're just not eating at all. They're eating pizza and tacos and all of that. They come from their home cooked home with their mother made them loving meals to fast food day in and day out, and they not only are exposed to more diseases, but that's the time that they really need to up their nutrient intake to protect themselves against those things.
Let's talk about HPV, the human papilloma virus, if I said that correctly. So what about HPV? Again,
vitamin D was a 14% decrease in risk in the HPV. Some of these have been done so long ago, some of these studies, and they've just been put on the back burner, which I found was really interesting as I was studying for this, that it's no longer looked at. Now you just get the vaccine or whatever, but you can still get a disease even if you're vaccinated. And for those people who can't be, they need to know this. Like, this is important information. And so it's vitamin D, folic acid, which is a B vitamin, vitamin C, and again, zinc. Zinc is good for the strengthening the immune system.
What's interesting is you've mentioned vitamin A, vitamin D several times, vitamin C, and a study done here a couple years ago on nutrient deficiencies recognized by doctors and hospitals all across the country. A, D, E, and C were the 4 vitamins leading the way in nutrient deficiencies in patients, recognized by doctors and hospitals all across the country. So it's obvious how critical these are in defense of infectious disease. Let's talk about polio, because we don't hear much about that anymore these days.
Well, we don't hear much about polio, but we do see Guillain-Barré syndrome, Barré syndrome on the rise. We also see There is I should have written it down. Myelitis, I believe, is what it's called, transverse myelitis, which is similar symptoms to polio. And so some of the symptoms, although we don't call it polio anymore, we have seen some increase in recent years. I'm talking like 2 and 3 years, like really recently, in symptoms of what used to be called polio, not to the extent that it was that it affects necessarily the lungs, but it does affect the limbs. And in I found, again, as I was really studying this, which I kind of got into it at the end, I thought you guys don't need to know all these details, but it was fascinating. There was a study done, a paper written in 1938 about polio and vitamin B deficiencies. So people who were deficient in vitamin Bs, which is like from vegetables and stuff, of course, they were more susceptible to the polio virus. And so, and again, I'm not saying that a vitamin, if you're exposed to polio and you've got that, a vitamin B supplement's going to be your savior. I'm just saying that there is that association that goes with that. And we don't even really look at that anymore. So yeah, we don't hear much about polio, but we do have an increase in some types of diseases that are similar to polio.
Well, a last one here I want to mention is something that gets passed around many a season, all around the year, and that's the old flu bug.
Flu, yep. And again, you hear vaccines all the time. They're promoted with free groceries and free ice cream scoops at the whatever. I mean, there's a lot of profit in the flu vaccination, and so you're drawn, given free stuff to get into wherever it is to get that flu vaccine, which last year was only 19% effective, but that's more effective than 2 years ago, which was only 11% effective. But vitamin D, which is good for a number of things just that we've just talked about here, it would be the #1 way to protect yourself against flu. Now, anything that would support the immune system would be helpful there. Vitamin C, zinc, selenium, all of the types of nutrients that help support the immune function. But vitamin D would be at the top of that list for me. If I just had to pick one, if I just had to make sure my optimal levels were between 60 and 80, it would be vitamin D.
If you would, here in closing, just talk a little bit about the relevance and importance of minerals, because this has a lot to do with vitamins, and particularly in absorption. So talk about that a bit.
And we hear oftentimes we'll say, okay, go get a multivitamin, whatever. And so you get, and people know what vitamins are. They're, from food, but minerals are the precursor. So first you need minerals that are found in the soil to make the enzymes to absorb the vitamins. So minerals are the precursors to the absorption of the vitamins. And when you're mineral deficient, more people are mineral deficient than vitamin deficient, because our soils are, being depleted over the years through different farming techniques and spraying of Roundup and pesticides. And we're just not eating the quality foods that we should. So people are mineral deficient. You need minerals. And so I will often, when I work with clients, before they do any supplementation, just make sure that they are getting good mineral sources. And if not, that will be my first supplement that I would recommend, is a good mineral supplementation, because people are more deficient in minerals than they are vitamins. And you can only get minerals from the soil, from food, or from animals who ate the food, or from supplementation. Your body does not make them. You have to ingest them. So yeah, a lot of people are deficient in minerals, specifically selenium and zinc would be two really common mineral deficiencies, actually, with magnesium being the top one. So magnesium, zinc, and selenium. And I'm just remembering on the top of my head, I don't have any of this, written down, but so there's probably others too, but those three really stick out to me.
Something I want to mention when you talk about minerals is there is such a huge challenge and problem with minerals, and how important they are when you talk about them being precursors for digestion. How important minerals are was made abundantly clear to me years ago when one of the great health practitioners that I visited with shared with me that your brain makes 183 neurotransmitters that tell your entire body's organs, everything else, how to properly function. And every single one of those neurotransmitters will include several different minerals in the makeup of that neurotransmitter. If you are deficient in them, your brain can't make them. And he was visiting about how disease, we were talking about infectious disease, but just how disease in general sets into various areas of the body. Don't be mineral deficient.
We need to do a show on minerals specifically. Even when you talk about digestion. So zinc is needed to make digestive enzymes. Now, people can take and supplement with digestive enzymes, but it's always better if your body makes them. Zinc is needed. So people, again, and 40% of people over 60 are zinc deficient. So when you see an elderly person have digestive issues, if sometimes just making sure that they're eating foods high in zinc, but now you're going in that circle, because if you eat foods high in zinc, but you're not absorbing, so sometimes you do need a digestive enzyme and a zinc supplementation to kind of get that process started. But if you're deficient in zinc, you're not going to digest your food well. So minerals are so important.
All right, well, we'll leave that mineral discussion for another day. A lot of stuff goes into the consideration of staying healthy, but appreciate all the great tips. And as you saw, there was some core vitamins in here, vitamin A, D, vitamin C, the B vitamins. We visited a little bit about zinc and selenium. Make sure that you guys aren't deficient on those things. They can be major defenses against many of the significant infectious diseases that are out there. I'm Kevin Hunter with Jody Summers here on Health Kindness. Thanks everyone for joining us. This concludes today's live programming on Northwest Digital News. Thanks for joining us for this special broadcast. Heard around the world in more than 70 countries on YouTube, Instagram, Patreon, Facebook, and Twitch TV. If you enjoyed a story or guest we had here on Northwest Digital News and would like to strut your stuff on the broadcast, email us today at wainfo2017@gmail.com or call or text to 360-545-3501. We're always interested in unique stories, topics, and guests to share with our worldwide audience. Before you go, don't forget to give us a big thumbs up and comment on the live stream. And for those of you who'd like to financially support the broadcast, you can do so at patreon.com/Northwest Digital News. We thank you for your patronage. On behalf of Chris Bornstead, Kyle Torgeson, Stephanie Hunter, and all the people that made this broadcast possible, I'm Kevin Hunter. Till next time, take care.